Cat. Okay. Wow.
现在有很多人，因为2、3年的人哦，他不要以后，然后这个小过来这里。
Yeah. Interesting. Wow. Look at it up here.
，Huawei, China's top chip maker, have built an advanced processor to power its latest smartphone.
Huawei had to back out of the smartphone market because it didn't have access to the most advanced chips.
Chinese smartphone maker Huawei unveils its newest smartphone. It's more advanced than initially thought.
Huawei just surprised the world and shocked the US few days ago by launching a new top flagship phone, the Huawei Mate 60 Pro, which carries a 7nm chip despite the US restrictions. And the release of the Mate 60 Pro has been making waves not only in China but all across the globe, especially in the United States. This phone has satellite calls and messaging, apps powered by AI, with a download speed of up to 500 megabits per second, with a really fast wireless charging option. So I must ask you guys this question in this video. Is China currently winning the tech war so far? What do you think? Well, let's look at some facts in this video. By the way, if you love any China related content, don't forget to like and subscribe. As someone myself who uses iPhone and Huawei products, I had to dig deeper on what is really causing this problem and this tension between the US and China, especially related to Huawei, the chip ban and sanctions, and of course the universal tech sanctions as a whole. And one thing I can tell you is this, guys, the United States wasn't expecting this at all, because they knew that they had put in some sanctions which would definitely hold China down. But to everyone's greatest surprise, a few days ago, Huawei launched the Mate 60 Pro. They didn't even have a launch event, they didn't even make an announcement to everyone. It just appeared on their website and it sold out within minutes. As a business person myself and someone with a marketing background, I think that was a genius checkmate by Huawei against the US, against the iPhone, because sometimes when you want to gain the image, when you want to pass a message far, you don't need to speak much. I think that's what Huawei did in this case. They just released the phone and everyone spoke for them. They let everyone do the research on the phones themselves. And millennials, you need to remember that the iPhone launches in a few days, and with this launch, the iPhone stocks have been going through some trouble recently, and Huawei just made it worse. Well, hopefully it bounces back along the line, because as you guys know, China is one of the highest consumers of the iPhone. Last year, I went to Guangzhou during the launch of the iPhone 14 and I made a video about the launch, and I asked a couple of people about why they love the iPhones here in China. But then I have to ask this question. This year, will it be the same? Will the latest Huawei phones crumble the iPhone's launch? Will the latest Huawei phones create a huge shift in the consumer preferences? Well, let's just wait and see. One thing is for sure, the US wasn't expecting Huawei to go this far, and it definitely looks like China's tech is advancing much faster than anticipated. One funny aspect about all of this is that during the same period when the phone was getting launched here in China, the US Secretary of Commerce, Gina Raimondo, was just landing in Beijing around the same time, which when you think about it, it's kind of crazy because the launch and her arrival in Beijing were kind of happening simultaneously. And now millennials, remember that right from the Obama administration through the Trump administration, they have always considered most of Chinese tech a threat to the security of the USA, a threat to the security of the world. And I believe that's one of the reasons why they laid all the ban and sanctions on Huawei products alongside multiple tech gadgets from China. So over the past few years, the US had laid many sanctions on Chinese tech products, especially Huawei. Huawei went through a lot with all of these sanctions. And not just in the US, even across Europe. Some European countries were also trying to push the ban and the sanctions on Huawei, but it didn't really succeed. So despite the multiple bans on some Huawei phones, some tech gadgets from China, and of course the recent sanction troubles on the semiconductor chips, we can clearly see that this is a huge win for Huawei and for China. But what does it mean for the rest of the world? Now millennials, this changes everything for everyone, not just for China alone. Why do I say so? Because despite the US sanctions, China, Huawei went ahead to create the chips for their phones, and they got the Huawei Mate 60 Pro to the level of 5G with amazing characteristics despite all the US sanctions. Now, what does this mean for the rest of the world? What does this mean for other countries across the world that have been trying to create stuff but still under a sanction or a ban from the US? What is the image this portrays to the rest of the world? Does it mean that if there's a sanction in another country due to some reasons, maybe not just tech, maybe not just phones, it can be for multiple reasons, will they keep on respecting all the sanctions that have been put on them by the US? As you can see, China went ahead and made the 5G chips and even went ahead to put it in the market despite no launch event, but people still got it, and of course it's moving all across the world. So what do you guys really think it means for the rest of the world when it comes to the sanctions laid out by the United States? And while all of this is happening, recently the Western media said the Chinese government has banned government workers from using the iPhone. Well, from my deep research, I believe that's a population of about 500,000 people in the government. That's far less than 1% of the total Chinese population. So as a business person myself with an idea in marketing, I think if there was a plan to actually ban iPhones here in China, there will be many other ways for the Chinese government to do that. I think they could put restrictions on the iPhone, they could add some tariffs, some taxes on the sales of the iPhones to probably bump up the price to exponential levels, making it very hard for everyone to be able to afford. Because imagine you're a government worker here in China and the government says the iPhones are banned for everyone. You can still go home and get an iPhone. Your kids have iPhones, your family has iPhones. So what's the real difference? Because what I know is that here in China, the policies change every time. If they really wanted to limit the power of the iPhone here in China, it's easy. Just raise the prices or raise the tariffs or raise the taxes on the iPhone so that the population wouldn't be able to afford the iPhone and it would not be so common. But they didn't do that. So I'll leave you guys in the comments to think about it for yourselves. And all the news outlets and the media that are talking about the iPhone getting banned in all government offices here in China, most of them only have a source, no particular name to the source. The reason why I'm talking about all of this is so that we can look at it all objectively and use basic common sense. Because sometimes we can't just read the news or watch the news without using our own basic common sense. And from what I understand, years back, Huawei was banned in the US and spread across Europe, like I've explained in this video, so you guys see where that situation is coming from. And of course, that's one of the reasons why I think Huawei hasn't been able to break through the international market fully as compared to the iPhone and other brands worldwide. And talking about what the Western media said about the iPhones getting banned in all government offices here in China, the China I know, most of the netizens here in China would go on social media and criticize that aspect, that fact. I believe most times in situations like this, most of the citizens here in China go online and they share their grievances. They share how they feel about the whole situation, how they feel about the policy, and of course they push the government to be able to change that policy to favor everyone. So I think if that happened, probably you would have seen something about it on the Chinese media. But right up until now, I haven't seen that. And now, millennials, I've realized one thing in life. The more you try to hide or bring down something, the more it comes to light and more people want to know about it. I believe that's what is happening to Huawei right now. I think there's been so much going on trying to bring Huawei down. I think Huawei has always had the capabilities, but they have been limited due to lots of sanctions worldwide. But recently, I can clearly see that so many people are beginning to use logic and do their own research to be able to get more information about the reality of all tech and all gadgets. And I think one of the main boosts of Huawei's recent release is the fact that it has always been sanctioned, been banned, been restricted here and there for many years. So this launch right now with all the amazing aspects, the satellite calls and messaging, the fast download speed, the fast wireless charging, alongside other aspects including the 7nm chip which is found inside the phone, is crazy, and it sells itself to the public. And of course, so many people want to try out the phone now, myself included. I would love to try it out sometime. And we need to understand this, millennials. The point about the release of the Huawei Mate 60 Pro isn't just about the phone itself. It's about the chip in the phone and the whole tech embedded into that device in general, which can be used for other aspects in the tech world. Right now, there's so many eyes watching, so we just have to keep our fingers crossed and keep watching to see what happens next in the tech world. And well, if you want to see what happens next, because I'll be right here doing the research for you, and I'll bring to you all the latest information on this topic and of course on related topics like this in the near future. So if you want to see all of that, don't forget to like and subscribe. Remember, this is Willene. See you next time.